Gary Krupp is next. But first, this important story. On Tuesday, the Vatican opened archives related to Pope Pius XII's pontificate. As historians and researchers began to scour some 2 million documents for information, most attention will be paid to what they reveal about Pius's actions and attitudes toward the Jewish people and the Nazis during the Second World War. Here now to discuss this historic release is the founder and president of the Pave the Way Foundation. He's one of the world's foremost experts on the pontificate of Pius XII and his actions during the Second World War. Please welcome back to the program, Gary Krupp. Gary, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Raymond. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, Pope Francis allowed these archives to be opened 8 years prior to what canon law dictates. Now, first off, tell me, why is this important in the wake of that play back in the 60s, The Deputy, the Cornwall book, Hitler's Pope, vis-a-vis the pontificate of Pius XII and his actions during World War II?
Well, this is very, very important because, as you well know, everybody who lived through the war knew the actions of Pius XII and of the Holy See under his pontificate. And because of the Russian disinformation program, which started in February of 1960 and actually culminated with in 1963 with the play The Deputy. And so when it started, an entire slew of things completely reversing the true history of what happened. And this is the most disturbing thing, because you took a man who did so much good and saved so many lives, and to completely turn the world's opinion against him. This is a sin. It's a sin in Judaism. It's a sin, you know, in all civilized religions and so on. It's very,
who were the agents of this? Before we move on to this new treasure trove of information, and I do want to move to it, and I know you over many years have been collecting information from archives all over the world, but who was interested in destroying the reputation of Pius XII and propagating this lie about him?
It actually started with Joseph Stalin. And because, as you know, the Holy See and under the pontificate of Pius XII were very anti-communist. And then continued with Khrushchev. And Khrushchev financed this with the KGB. And we know the entire story because we have the, Ron Rishlak, as you know, Ron wrote the book Disinformation with General Mihai Pacepa, who was the highest ranking KGB agent ever to defect. And he very clearly lays out precisely how they did it. And all of the games they played. They actually forged documents and so on, and pushed this agenda. It was terrible and very effective. Yeah. Very, very. It's effective to this very day.
Well, Italian media is reporting of a document in the archives, in the Vatican archives, from the Vatican's Press and Information Service. Now, it bears Pius's handwriting in the margins, and the note reads, or the document reads, this is a dispatch from the Vatican's Information Office, quote, "On the night of the 15th and 16th October, a considerable number of Jews were arrested in various parts of Rome. Stop. After being held 24 hours in the military college, were transported to an unknown destination. Stop. It is said that the Holy See was concerned that similar events should not be repeated and in favor of particular cases." And alongside that comment, Pius writes in his hand, "Is it prudent for the press service to send this news?" What do you make of that? What does it tell you?
Well, he tells us because the Vatican was operating all over Europe, actually, and far before the October 16th in saving Jewish lives. And they certainly did not want the entire Nazi regime to know about this. It was so that they really, and we have a lot of different documents that came up similar to this. We have one actually with the American ambassador and the British ambassador were asking Pius XII not to speak out against the Nazi and Hitler, the Nazi regime and Hitler, because it would have also meant that he would have had to speak out against the Russians. That would have hurt the Allied movement. So there are all kinds of secret documents and things that went on. But we know very clearly that the actions that were taken by Pius XII and all over Europe, and monies that were sent to many different areas. Now, you have to realize, during our research, a lot of people don't realize this, but the documents that are in the secret archives are original documents, the copies of which are in many of the dioceses. So Pave the Way Foundation we went to Campania, we went to Assisi, we went to Vienna, and we have maybe 4,000 wartime documents. and we've had them for years. And so a lot of the researchers, quote-unquote historians, who really did not do a very good job researching this, really could have had access to a lot of this material before.
So now, 150,000 people have applied to access these archival documents. 150 people, sorry. Only 60 can be accommodated in the offices at any one time. What do you think the process is going to look like? And do you expect any new answers, a smoking gun, if you will?
Well, we've been getting some smoking guns, like the one you just described, which is a very positive one. But the reason, first of all, the reason is there's a physical inability for them to do it. Meredith and I both have access to the secret archives, or what are now called the apostolic archives, and we have access to the archives of the Secretary of State. And the procedures are bizarre. The Secretary of State archives are completely digitized, and you've got 24 computer terminals. Much simpler. The original secret, or the papal, actually the papal archives, are done the same way as they've been done for centuries.
Yeah, they're all boxed up. They're on the split screen with you there, and you see them by year broken up. They're in boxes. They're rather cumbersome to work their way through.
Yeah, and you can also only get 4 documents a day, and you have to be there. So our director for Germany, Michael Hessman, who's an avid archival researcher, he's got 3 weeks. He's been there, and I keep getting emails every day of what they've discovered. And so he asked if I need copies of this and that, and I said, look, I'll give just a quick example. He called me, said they saw 1,100 documents of where Jews who were being in certain locations were writing to the Secretary of State for help, and then the responses. He says, do you need these documents? I said, actually, I've got 3,000 of those from Campania. Exactly the same thing, where the Vatican was interceding to reunite families, to help Jews who were being persecuted, and to get them stuff. So we've got 76,000 pages on our website, free for anybody to access. So we have all this, plus the eyewitness interviews, which are priceless, because these people are all gone now.
Right.
Sir Martin Gilbert and so on, and so on. These are very incredible piece of information.
Yeah, I had him on the show. The American Jewish Committee released a statement on Monday welcoming the opening of the Vatican Secret Archives, saying, quote, "We trust that the independent scholarly review of these archival materials will provide greater clarity as to what positions and steps were taken during this period by the Holy See and help resolve the persistent debates and controversy in this regard. Such necessary transparency is also to the credit of the Church and will further enhance the mutual trust and excellent relations between the Catholic Church and the Jewish community built up over the last 55 years. What are you hearing from people in the Jewish faith, Gary, particularly those in the Rome community? I hear the current chief rabbi of Rome is rather suspicious of any new information. He seems to have made up his mind about Pius.
Well, he certainly has. I once had an argument with him about this. We did, as you well know, we did a symposium for 3 days actually in the military college where the Jews were kept in the Piazza Salviati, and we invited the Roman Jewish community to attend. He says, nobody's going to attend. I know. I researched this. I said, you researched this? You're steps away from the secret archives. Have you ever gone there? Also, and it's not just the secret archives. Most of certainly the information of the arrest of the Jews on October 16th, we're not even there. They're in the archives of Santa Maria dell'Anima, the Austrian cathedral, in which we've got documents which show precisely what happened that day and how Pius XII acted directly and personally to end the arrest of the Roman Jews at 2 o'clock the day it started.
Wow. So this is in 1943, right?
October 16th, 1943. That's correct.
And how do we know that?
Exactly what happened that day.
How do we know?
We know it because we know it because in Santa Maria dell'Anima is the actual correspondence between General Rainier Stahel, who was the German commander of Rome, and Pius XII's nephew, Carlo Pacelli, who was an official of the Vatican, and Pancratius Pfeiffer and so on. And the efforts that were made were, I could go into the reason why they ended the arrest at 2 o'clock that day, but because there was a military reason. The problem was that there was, and we have the actual documentation, which nobody acknowledges, about how General Karl Wolff was ordered by Adolf Hitler to invade the Vatican, kidnap the Pope, take him to Liechtenstein where he'd be killed, and he would, but the German military knew If this happened, there would be riots all over Europe. And they actually came out and they said, and General Stahl had to call Heinrich Himmler on the phone, and we actually interviewed Father Gumpel, actually interviewed the person, General Dietrich Baylitz, who heard the conversation, where he threatened Himmler, and he said, look, we need 384 troops to arrest the Roman Jews, which is not normally a problem.
Right.
However, the partisans are picking us off at night, and the Allies have full air superiority, and you're expecting me to supply the troops fighting down south. You have to accept responsibility for this. And so Himmler, not being a military man, backed off and said, for special purposes, the arrest will stop. That's why they stopped. And so they used the threat that the Pope would speak out against the arrest to get the Germans to stop the arrest. And that was very, very effective. It worked. And then, as you well know, Pius XII issued verbal orders and written orders all over Europe to protect the Jews. And we actually have studies of how many were Jews, where they were kept. I actually have the diary of Augustinian nuns, where they said that today we were asked by the Holy Father to protect the Jews, and it names the people they took in.
Yeah,
and
so
it's
amazing.
There's so much evidence of and then plus the fact that the Pope has to lift cloister to allow women to go into monasteries and men to go into convents.
Right, which he did.
And so they ordered this protection. Right, he certainly did.
No,
Gary,
I remember years ago interviewing nuns who were then in their 80s, recounting how they would come in the night, they'd knock on the door, and mothers and Jewish mothers and their children would come in. They would dress the women as nuns and hide the children away. And many times these convents were raided, and they hid the families under the stage, and the nuns got on stage and pretended they were rehearsing some little drama, and then the Nazis went away. An amazing, dramatic saving of so many lives here. How many lives do you estimate Pius XII might have saved?
Saved totally?
Jewish lives.
The number is actually rising. Well, Jewish lives totally, the number is rising. It was that during the war, the wartime, an Israeli ambassador and historian, Pinchas Lapida, estimated that he saved 887,000 lives in Europe under the pontificate. This number is rising now because there were many things that happened that he was unaware of. We happen to know about many of these life-saving efforts. So it's now closer to well over 900,000, which is today is 4 million Jews, which is also 25% of all the Jews alive. There are only 16 million Jews in the entire world.
That's amazing.
0.2% of the population. And so, the problem, Raymond, as you may be aware, is that in Judaism, and this was told to me by the chief rabbi of Israel, the worst character flaw a Jew can have is ingratitude. It's in the Bible. When Moses had to strike the Nile River, he couldn't do it. It would have shown ingratitude to the Nile, which gave him life. So there's a very important principle. So this Russian disinformation program robbed the Jewish people of the dignity of showing gratitude to the entity, the church, the Holy See, and this Pope for saving their lives. This is a sin in Judaism. And the fact is, there are a lot of people who have to atone for that sin, that I believe.
Before I let you go, should Yad Vashem recognize Pius XII as righteous among nations? Do you expect that as a result of the opening of these archives?
I expect that will happen. It happens that we submitted, Pave the Way Foundation submitted almost 6 years ago, documents proving, and actually because he follows all of the rules to be righteous among nations, and we submitted to him, but they're really not even looking at them. They're pending this. Yad Vashem is very fair, and I'll tell you why. They had that very terrible placard in the Hall of Shame.
I remember. I saw it.
And in 2012, they invited Professor Napolitano and Andrea Tornielli to Jerusalem to have a conference and understand something, that we were sending hundreds of documents that we were discovering. They would not accept them from me. Yad Vashem would not take them from me. I sent them to then Archbishop Franco. I would email them to him. He would print them. He would hand deliver them to the director of Yad Vashem. And now they're finding all of this material, and then they effectively change that placard. It's still negative, but it's modified. And in it, it says we're waiting for the archives to open. It's going to take years before we find all of this material. But the fact is, a lot of this has been out there, and people have refused to look at it.
Well, I'm going to tell people, I want to tell people where they can find it, Gary, because you all have done incredible work over these years to collect from tiny archives, monasteries, dioceses in far-flung parts of the world, information related to this still contested moment in history. And it's just an incredible bit of work that Pave the Way Foundation has done. Gary Krupp, thank you for being here. This is the address on the website that you can find all of this information. It's ptwf.org, Pave the Way Foundation,
right.
ptwf.org. Gary Krupp, thank you for being here. We'll check in with you as we learn more from these archives.
We're going to, but very quickly, you have to register to get to the pages because that's the property of the Holy See. And you have to agree that you're not going to be using this for commercial purposes, and everybody can have full access to it free of charge. 76,000 pages. So we have that plus the interviews.
Thank you, Gary.
Raymond, thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for being
much.
here.
Take care now. Thank you.